Excellency President Lula Inácio Lula da Silva, ambassadors who are here present, and respective ministers, distinguished members of the media, and our various officials from both countries, and ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank President Lula for the very warm welcome that he extended to us from South Africa. My delegation and myself have been so well and warmly received in Brazil, and we are truly grateful for that. We've had very constructive discussions this morning spanning a number of issues, and we are very pleased that President Lula and myself have witnessed the signing of 2 documents. But let me start off by saying, President Lula, that we wish to pay our respects to the victims of the recent floods who perished in the landslide of the state of Minas Gerais, and convey our condolences to their families. Our meeting and our visit takes place in a year that South Africa celebrates 30 years of our constitution. Brazil is one of those countries that contributed a great deal to the freedom that we now have in South Africa, a freedom which is encapsulated in the Constitution that we are celebrating for 30 years. And on this occasion, we reflect on the progress our democratic nation has made and the sacrifices that were made by many people who struggled for us to gain our freedom and independence. And for this, we are truly and eternally grateful for the solidarity that the people of Brazil and the leaders of Brazil showed us during our struggle. This support contributed meaningfully to the achievements that we now celebrate in South Africa. Our visit to Brazil takes place against the backdrop of renewed conflict in the Middle East. We reiterate our call for the peaceful resolution of disputes in line with the United Nations Charter, and we condemn the loss of life, particularly the lives of civilians, and the destruction of vital infrastructure in that part of the world. And we call on all parties involved in this conflict to immediately cease fire so that the conflicts can be solved through negotiations. President Lula, your leadership has strengthened the foundations of our strategic partnership. We regard Brazil as a strategic partner in more ways than one, and we value your cooperation and also collaboration on a number of issues and areas. South Africa and Brazil share a commitment to equality, economic growth, and the eradication of poverty. And these shared values provide a strong basis for continuing to build practical, mutually beneficial initiatives that advance our respective national development priorities. I am joined in this visit by several ministers and officials working with their Brazilian counterparts. This delegation is well positioned to expand cooperation across key areas of mutual interest. However, President Lula and I, in our discussions, bemoaned the fact that we have not really lived up to the standard that we are entitled to. As the two countries, Brazil and South Africa, should be cooperating at a much higher level. We should be trading at a much higher level. Our two countries are the most industrialized on our respective continents, and trade between our two countries needs to be much, much bigger than what it is now. But we have both said that this visit is strengthening the foundation between our two countries with regard to further trade, further investments. There are a number of areas where we need to be cooperating and trading and investing and researching much more than we do. Brazil is a leading country when it comes to agriculture. We have a lot to learn. It's a leading country when it comes to energy. We have a lot to learn. In tourism, you receive more tourists than we do. We have a lot to learn. And in defense and aviation, you are much more advanced, and we have a lot to learn from each other, and we also have a lot to show you as well. And so therefore, we want our businesses to cooperate at a much deeper and higher level. And the forthcoming business forum, which the Vice President and myself will be addressing, will be a platform for us to call on the business sector to deepen the relationships between our two countries. When it comes to other areas, for instance, in terms of just how you have gone ahead to ensure that at the social level there's great advancement for your people, is another area where we as South Africans have learned a lot from you. When it comes to sports, you have excelled in sports, in football or soccer, and we have excelled in rugby. So we have a lot to teach each other. You can send us your best coaches, and we will send you our best rugby coaches as well. So the South Africa-Brazil Joint Commission is a central platform for the work that we look forward to doing together. We already have a very strong formal platform through which we can enhance the cooperation between our two countries. We also welcome progress in the various sectors where our cooperation has been extended over many years. But we also know that we need to do much more, much better than we are doing at this point in time. For deepening economic cooperation is imperative, particularly now as the world is faced by tariffs that seem to be very unfair on a number of countries. We are the two countries that must be trading much more on a much more friendly basis. So South Africa remains committed to strengthening cooperation with Brazil in agriculture, agro-processing, and value-added exports, and enhancing reciprocal market access, including through the SACU-Mercosur Preferential Trade Agreement. Our business delegation stands ready to pursue new commercial opportunities. We have brought together with us about 20 South African businesses, and next time we want to bring many more. South Africa serves as the strategic entry point for Brazil into the African continent, just as Brazil provides a gateway for South Africa into South America and the Caribbean. So this visit strengthens the linkages that we have, and for us supports a broader regional cooperation process. And so as we conclude our visit to Brazil tomorrow, we will go home knowing that our bonds have been strengthened and our intent to expand trade and investment has been consolidated, and that our strategic partnership with Brazil is extended to go even further. The clarity and warmth of our discussions gives me a great deal of confidence that the momentum that has been generated during this visit will indeed yield concrete outcomes for our two nations and will advance the interests of our people together. President Lula, thank you once again for your generosity as well as hospitality and the spirit of partnership that continues to define our relationship. I also wish to thank you for having attended the G20 that was held in Johannesburg. Your attendance at the G20 just lifted the stature of the G20. And I must say that South Africa was very pleased to be president of the G20 after Brazil, because we learned a lot from how you were president of the G20, and we copied quite a number of things from what you did. The most important one was convening the G20 Social Summit. We carried that work forward, and we were very, very pleased that we had a big Brazilian delegation, not only at the G20, but at the G20 Social Summit. And we are very pleased that you have pledged support for the work that South Africa has initiated with regard to getting the whole world to deal with the challenge of inequality. You supported the report that South Africa initiated, which was headed by Professor Joseph Stiglitz. And we also are pleased that you support our work to take that report to the UN so that it can be embraced not only by South Africa and Brazil, but indeed by the world as a whole. We count on your support as we will continue to support the work that you initiated during the G20 that you headed so well here. So for us as South Africans, it's like coming home. Being in Brazil is our second home, and we are truly delighted with the manner in which we have been received here. So thank you very much, my dear comrade and friend. Thank you, Monte Obrigado.
Ladies and gentlemen, with the floor, the President of the Republic, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. My dear comrade Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, this is the fourth time that President Ramaphosa visits Brazil. But this time it is a special occasion because this is his first state visit to our country. South Africa and Brazil act to bring our continents closer together. We are partners at the BRICS, IBSA, and at the G20. We share the struggle of a more balanced and representative global order based on international law and multilateralism. This morning, we held a very fruitful meeting where we went through bilateral, regional, multilateral issues. Today, our countries are signing two instruments that will strengthen our economic, commercial, and political ties. We renewed for 4 years the action plan for the tourism sector with the goal of increasing business and leisure trips between our countries, on street directly to South African and Brazilian wishes, we have concluded an agreement on trade and investment between Apex Brazil and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competitiveness from South Africa. When President Ramaphosa and I met at the margin of G20 at the end of last year in Johannesburg, we saw that the trade relations is not at the level of the potential that our countries have. The annual exchange between Brazil and South Africa has been standing still for almost 20 years, reaching recently $2.3 billion. Brazil, with 215 million inhabitants. South Africa has 62 million inhabitants. South Africa is the most industrialized country in the African continent. We're the most industrialized country in Latin America. Thus, there is no political explanation for us to not have trade above $10 billion. So there's something lacking in our relationship, comrade. You're one of the few presidents who I can really call comrade, because you've been to the plant's floor in the same way as I have. And I think that this visit by President Ramaphosa is going to allow us to rethink our action for South Africa, because we have a lot of similarities. We have a lot to learn from South Africa. We have a lot to teach South Africa. We have things in the area of energy that Brazil has expertise in renewable energy, where we can exchange knowledge with South Africa. So we have a lot to teach and learn in science and technology. We have a lot to teach and learn in agriculture. Brazil is a big agricultural country. Brazil is a country that has an extraordinary potential, and all of this may be at the service of the South Africa-Brazil relations. Above all, culture-related issues. We have our minister here, Margaret Menezes. In addition to being a minister, she's a very important, famous singer. So, you should have seen her at Carnival this year. If you haven't, you missed out. So it's important for us to take a bit of our culture to South Africa and bring their culture to Brazil. I mean, I'm sure that we can have the dimension that we've got no borders. I mean, between Brazil and South Africa, there is no border, just a tiny little ocean between us, It's a piece of sea. I say to him, Ramaphosa, he can sit on the balcony of his house, I will sit on the balcony of my house, and we can wave at each other, because all we've got is like a sea between us. And it's not a sea that separates us. The sea was made to unite us, because political behavior by human beings is what has, split us up, because the sea was made to bring us together. So we also decided to expedite the conclusion of the negotiation of a cooperation agreement for facilitating investments in agribusiness. We want to move forward in sharing best practices and collaborate in animal health related issues through the Agricultural Cooperation Working Group. Brazil's promulgation of the agreement on cooperation in matters related to defense will open the possibility of new joint projects to be developed. South Africa and Brazil, South Africa, which is already a destination of Embraer aircrafts in the African continent, will also be able to become a relevant market for the defense industry. And then here, President Ramaphosa, something important here in South America, we present ourselves as a region of peace. I mean, we haven't got any nuclear weapons here. No one has, atomic weapons in this region. Our drones are used in agriculture for science and technology, and we don't use drones for war. So we thought and think of defense as, dissuasion. But I'm not sure if Comrade Ramaphosa can see that if we do not prepare ourselves in the area of defense, we might get invaded at some point, So this is something that Brazil has a similar need to South Africa. And therefore, we need to, put our potential together with yours to see what we can produce, build together. We don't need to buy from the lords of weapons. We could produce our own. What we need is for us to convince ourselves that no one is going to help us apart from ourselves. So the area of defense is a very important area, Comrade Ramaphosa, for us to work together. Very important that the Minister of Defense is here. She's meeting my Minister of Defense at 5, so they're going to have lunch together today, facing each other, and hopefully they'll talk a lot about Brazil and South Africa approximation in relation to the area of defense. Our countries also have great potential in the area of critical minerals, which are essential for energy and digital transition, which is ongoing. We want to rethink the role of natural resources exploitation, strengthening productive chains in our territories. And here, Ramaphosa, something important is that we need to have a concrete, we need to survey what South Africa has as far as rare earths and critical minerals. Brazil knows 30% of the potential that we've got in our territory, and we have a lot of things, and we have already told the world that Brazil is not going to make rare earths and critical minerals what was done with mining ore. We sold the mining ore, and then we would pay, we would buy the finished products paying 100 times more. No, partnership now needs to be done so that we can do the transformation process here in Brazil, and we can work together with South Africa. We could set up joint companies to explore these resources. I mean, they've taken all our silver, all our gold, they've taken all our diamonds, all our mining ore. It's enough. What else do they want to take, When are we going to learn that God put all of this wealth in this territory for us, and we keep giving it to other people? So it's a matter of political decision, right? So us who have rare earths and critical minerals, we need to make the most of them so that we may turn this into a source of enrichment, knowledge, so that our people can live better. And the second thing is the climate change issue. I thanked South Africa's active participation at COP30, which was an extraordinary COP. President Ramaphosa and I shared the knowledge of a bold climate agenda that brings together environmental preservation, economic growth, and social justice. I invited South Africa to take part in the Tropical Forest Forever facility, which was launched in Berlin. This is something important, President Ramaphosa, for the first time. Countries from the global south, they're not asking for money from the rich countries. We created a fund, right? A facility, and then we are going to invest in this fund, and then if you invest in this fund, you're going to get yield from this investment, and part of this yield is going to be used to finance countries that keep their forests standing. And this is because we do not believe in the pledge made by rich countries in Copenhagen 2009. They presented a proposal of donating $100 billion every year, and until now, so 2009 to 2026, this $100 billion have not been seen. And now we need $1.7 trillion. And then if you didn't give us 100, they're not going to give us $1 trillion. So this is why we came up with this ingenious facility, the TFFF. We discussed the contribution of the sequences of the chairmanship of Brazil and South Africa, the G20, for advocating for these points of interest for these two developing countries. The Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty and the proposal of the International Panel on Inequalities are examples that we can build a lot when we know how to work together. It is important for us to preserve the G20 capacity of addressing the big issues of current times. This means that all members should take part in the group's activities, and it is in this sense that I have reinforced Brazil's support to South Africa's participation throughout this year. The G20 without South Africa is another forum. It is not the G20 which we created in 2008. Our bilateral partnership also brings us closer together in fighting political extremisms. At the invitation of the President of the government, Pedro Sanchez, me and President Ramaphosa will meet once more in Barcelona on the 18th of April for the 4th meeting in defense of democracy. We want to make sure that our countries work closer together in issues of regulation of digital environment, artificial intelligence, and the appraising of information sources as far as quality information, including domestic political issues in relation to strengthening this multilateral environment agenda. Brazil and South Africa, they share the conviction that the Global South has to have an active voice in the big international decisions. I told President Ramaphosa of my deep concern with the scaling up of conflict in the Middle East, which represents a serious threat to international security and peace with wide-reaching economic and humanitarian impacts. These conflicts produce deleterious effects on the energy input and food chains. It is the most vulnerable, above all children and women, who suffer the most severe impact of this crisis. Dialogue and diplomacy are the only viable path for building a lasting solution. It is important to remember that because of the war in Iran, fuel prices is hiking up throughout the world. Oil prices are going up very much, and they're probably going to go up in all countries in the world. My dear friends, the South African poet Dennis Brutus, in his poem, There Will Come a Time, he dreamed of a time when borders would be less important than the shine of friendship. I'd like to thank once more my friend Ramaphosa for his visit to Brazil. And if there is a shine in our friendship that brings us close together, I'd like to say that as far as Brazil is concerned, the respect and care that we have vis-a-vis South Africa, the respect we have for your work and for the work of the other South African presidents, is something that deserves that Brazil works ever harder for South Africa to be seen with good eyes by Brazilian intellectuals, business community, artists, politicians, so that we may stop looking to Europe, to the US, and we start looking to those who are close to us, to those who look like us, for those who have the same problems, and therefore we have the same solution. My dear comrade, be sure that we are going to meet in Barcelona, and then possibly, I'm not sure if you're going to be invited, but we're going to meet at the G7, at the BRICS, and we are going to meet still this year at the G20. So therefore, I'd like you to know that you are going back to South Africa tomorrow, leaving an old comrade behind, very much missing your presence. So send you a warm embrace, and thank you very much, comrade. And this ceremony has been concluded. We ask all of you to wait in your seats for the leaving of the President of the Republic and also the President of the Republic of South Africa.